So we're going to bring our next group on here. I'm really excited to have this group speaking. We do want to thank TMGcore. So we've got a great group here because TMGcore helped sponsor this event as our gold sponsor. I want to thank Lee Bratcher. Lee, welcome. Lee runs the Texas Blockchain Council. We've got J.D. Enright, who I just mentioned, with TMGcore, our gold sponsor today. And they're going to have a fantastic conversation about blockchain, which I don't understand. Maybe I'll understand more after you guys are done, right? And its applications in space, et cetera. So I'll turn it over to Lee, and if you'll introduce your group, we're looking forward to this interesting conversation.
Absolutely, David. Thanks for having us on. It's a pleasure to moderate this panel of distinguished panelists. I am Lee Bratcher, the president of the Texas Blockchain Council. We are an industry association working to make Texas a leader in blockchain innovation. And I am honored to be here today with several panelists. J.D. Enright, CEO of TMGcore. He's a dedicated business professional, nearly 30 years of experience working with multinational private and public sector organizations to execute strategic growth initiatives in emerging markets and technologies. He specializes in leadership and development, next generation of high-performance computing platforms, global blockchain strategies, biotechnology, viral cell and gene therapies, and market intelligence assimilation. We're also joined by Chris Stott, the founder, chair, and CEO of Lonestar Data Holdings. So Lonestar Data Holdings is a lunar information technology and communications company. Chris is also the founder and executive chairman of Mandia, the world's largest commercial provider of satellite spectrum. Chris serves on the faculty of the International Space University, where he served on the university's main board for 15 years and executive committee for 10 years. Chris is the co-founder of both the Institute of Space Commerce and the International Institute of Space Commerce. And he is also the co-founder of Geeks Without Frontiers, where he serves as Geeks chair of its advisory board. Also privileged to have Karen Jones with us. Karen is a space economist and technology strategist for the Center for Space and Strategy at the Aerospace Corporation. She's been responsible for performing and managing a variety of projects, including federal R&D, research grants, internal R&D projects, commercial and space engagements, and a myriad of other things. I'll be posting their bios intermittently throughout the panel in the chat so that you guys could see them as an audience. We're also joined today by Cody Willard, the founder of the SKTL Space Debris Cleaning Cryptocurrency. He's also a hedge fund manager. Mr. Willard came to Wall Street with a one-way ticket from New Mexico in 1996. And he worked as a Starbucks barista until he got a job stapling papers and answering phones at Oppenheimer, where he became a stockbroker and analyst and the first ever partner to legendary stockbroker Andrew
Lanier.
Thanks, Cody, for helping me out with that. So we've got distinguished panelists here. I could probably continue with their bios for the next several minutes, but rather than do that, I'd like the audience to hear from the panelists directly. So ladies and gentlemen, why don't y'all go through and fill in any gaps from your bios that I missed, and then I'll jump in with some questions that we can start engaging on. Karen, go ahead.
As far as my background and the topic, I dove into blockchain and what it means because I was confused and I wanted to really understand cryptocurrency, why it was so mysterious, and also, given that I focus on the space sector, how can we look at this from a strategic asset perspective, and what are the applications for space? So that's my background with blockchain, really just looking at this, what's real, what's not, where is the hype? And that's why I'm here today, to talk about it.
Understood. We're looking forward to the conversation. Chris, just a little bit of your background as it applies to blockchain.
No, thank you very much, Lee. Thank you to the fellow panelists. Wonderful to see everybody. Thank you for having us today, and thank you for having me. We actually, our company, Lonestar, we're actually using blockchain today from space. We've been running a bunch of tests since last December up on the International Space Station using software-defined payloads data centers, working with Canonical, the edge of network team up there, to actually run Ubuntu, but also inside of that, in a virtual machine, run a distributed ledger. And it's been going so far so well. And so we find it a fascinating tool. In fact, we can't imagine doing business without blockchain. And I got more to say, of course, and but I'm really looking forward to hearing from the panelists. They are way more knowledgeable on this stuff than I am. I was going to be that quiet guy who just sits there wide-eyed going, oh my gosh, that was fascinating.
Thanks, Chris. JD.
Yeah, good morning. It's an honor to be here with great panelists. So, my background as it relates to blockchain, and not so much space as it were, but certainly Leo, I suspect, is part of it. Here at TMGcore, we're on the hardware side and the software side. So we developed the infrastructure, the backbone that allows for blockchain, whether it be smart contracting or, in some case, crypto or DeFi and, secure comms using satellite feeds. So I think we're the only ones in the world, or one of the only ones in the world, who actually can have a mobile blockchain, computing application, high performance computing application as it's driving across the country using satellites, actually, and to communicate with dispersive networks for encrypted data transfer. So we've been doing that now for quite some time. The company was founded by myself and three of my partners, doing high performance computing using ASICs chips, 14 nanometer ASICs chips, specifically for blockchain applications. And we continue to evolve on top of that using GPUs and other types of applications. So both on the hardware and the software side.
Thanks, JD. Cody.
So my full-time day job is running a hedge fund. I've been an investor. I bought blockchain and wrote about Bitcoin, and I wrote about why people should put their up to 1% of their portfolio into Bitcoin for the Wall Street Journal back in 2013 when Bitcoin was just $100. I've owned it and taken it as payment for years since 2013. And more recently, I've been blown away by all of the fraud and stupid and silly cryptocurrencies that are out there. And so I dove in and tried to figure out how to build one, ended up creating a team of volunteers with about 20 people. And my favorite thing to invest in right now is space. I think space is the next $1 trillion economy, most obvious $1 trillion economy that we can invest in. And so I'm actually an investor in Relativity long-term for 3 or 4 years. The panelist, the CEO was just on here before us. And anyway, we decided to create a space debris cleaning cryptocurrency, trying to use profit motive as an incentive to get space enthusiasts into our cryptocurrency. And once a year, we donate 10% of half of the cryptocurrency that we put is going into a fund that is donated to cleaning up space debris every year.
That's awesome. It's a much needed problem, and using the free market to tackle it seems like the right solution.
Well, and that might be a good segue into your topics. I mean, that is where we've got space and blockchain literally tackling a problem in space that will not be tackled with otherwise with economic incentive. It'll have to be a government, funded thing that'll work to clean it up.
And potentially could be more efficiently done through the private sector.
Amen, as always.
Mm-hmm. So let me start with kind of a question that may seem curious to the audience, but it's a question I think that will help us frame the rest of the discussion. This technology is game changing, as you guys have all espoused. Why is it not being adopted faster in the space industry? Is it because of owners regulation, or the potential use cases, the technical challenges are too difficult to overcome? So let me pose that to all the panelists.
I'll jump in there. I'm not surprised at all. Quite frankly, terrestrial crypto isn't being widely adopted. I mean, there's a lot of people who are doing it. They just won't tell you they're doing it. Some of the biggest investment firms, banks, and otherwise are heavily invested in the billions of dollars, but they'll never admit to it, but at least they won't at the moment, for whatever perceived risk there is. So I'm not surprised that it isn't what Cody's doing, I think, is phenomenal in his team there, in being able to utilize it. You said it best. Let's face it, if we're not putting our money behind it, if there's not an incentive, commercial incentive to do it, the government's not going to. I mean, it's not really their job to do that, right? It's really our jobs as a commercial entity, as a democratic country who believes in building businesses that survive and make sense. And so why isn't it being adopted in spaces more than like a company like Cody's? Because it hasn't even been fully adopted here in the US and terrestrially in particular. And it's not because of regulation. I think it's because of lack of regulation, potentially. I think the sooner we can get regulation around this, people feel more comfortable that the sovereign wealth funds can invest, 401k plans can invest. And once they start doing that, that'll stabilize cryptocurrencies in general.
That's right. And I think, sorry, but I think a large part of it is it's so new. And one of the things that I just mentioned is, there out of 19,000 or 20,000 cryptocurrencies out there, 99.9% of them are silly, stupid, or outright fraudulent. And there is this unique revolution that has happened with cryptocurrency, enabling new incentive models. And I call it the incentive revolution, because you do create, you can tackle common problems that were never able to be tackled before using incentive through blockchain. And that's what, we're trying to do. And I think that concept is still new. No one is, we could take the same concept that we're using to clean up space debris, donating 10% of the funds every year to cleaning that up, to cleaning up plastics in the ocean or feeding children. Every time someone, by the way we mine SKTL tokens is every time there's a successful space event. Anytime a risk of more space debris is sent up to space, satellite, human beings, whatever it is, once a month, we mine more tokens as a distribution, half of which go into the fund. The other half go to the people who signed up for the free airdrop that when we gave them all away, and or since then has bought some of these tokens as a space enthusiast. And I think that's so new, this concept, the incentives behind blockchain. And right now, our esteemed panelists have ideas, and they're putting blockchain on satellites and getting it off of Earth. But that's still just, that's the tiniest first building block into what eventually blockchain can sort of be applied in all kinds of different manners of, organizations. We create new organizational structures through the DAO, and that's also creates new incentives. Please, other panelists, I didn't mean to jump in front of you.
No, Cody, that was JD. That was great. I mean, look, blockchain helps me sleep at night. I can't imagine operating in the space environment without blockchain. But and the answer, one of the answers maybe to that question is space is super hard. It's rocket science. And for so long, the people in the space, and especially the satellite communications industry, that $400 billion a year backbone of telecoms for the entire planet, we've been so busy doing it and making sure the tech works. These new ideas of abundance and exponential ideas coming out, like the use of blockchain, they're revolutionary for us. And absolutely, fulfilling blockchain, fulfilling crypto via space. We're going to be doing some of that from the lunar surface. It's a great thing to do. But the real revolution I would suggest, gents and ma'am, is it's the use of blockchain and distributed ledger for the tracking of logistics, the tracking of objects in space. There's a huge disparity between the International Telecommunications Union, who runs spectrum in space, and the UN Register of Space Objects. According to the ITU, there are more satellites up there than there are registered at the UN. I go with the ITU. They tend to track reality and actuality. And so what's happening is government is linear, but change is exponential. And I think, JD, you spoke to this. Cody, I think you have. Karen, I know you have in the past. It's just, things are moving so fast. The gentleman who led us into the talk here today said, some people check their calendars where others check their watches. And change is happening so much faster. and the ability to use a distributed ledger for economic benefit. Cody, for every satellite that goes up, startup, major, they should be blockchained, not just the supply chain, but the actual satellites, so we know who they are, what they are. And we can do that almost instantly with an economic incentive to do that, from insurance to financing and more, and coin and crypto, than actually sitting down and filling out all the paperwork, which you should do, and you have to do. It's a regulatory process at the UN and through our own governments. Yeah, we could actually leverage.
That is an incredibly practical application of blockchain. A public ledger tracking every satellite, every space station, anything that gets put up there. And by the way, space debris too, right? I mean, there are people and companies out there tracking space debris, but putting it on an open ledger on blockchain is, like totally a perfect application. Karen,
yeah,
please.
I'll add on this one. So space situational awareness position data could be used in a blockchain type of application. And the players would include countries and commercial interest. And it's a way to get parties that do not necessarily trust each other to work together and do it in a decentralized fashion, using blockchain smart contracts and other means to create a certain amount of accountability. So I think that is a good thing that we should be exploring. We have to do it in an automated, quick way. I will say this, cryptocurrencies are open. I don't think space situational awareness data, SSA data, should be completely open. We should have a permissioned ledger. And if we go in that direction, it can be quicker, and we won't have the energy intensiveness of doing the various types of proof of work, proof of stake that goes along with typical cryptocurrency blockchain. We're at a very pivotal time right now. We've seen a lot of volatility with cryptocurrencies. And I have to tell you, it does not appear to be a stable alternative to our current monetary system. The fact that we have cryptocurrencies desperately searching for a stable anchor, such as the US dollar that they peg their value to, is a sign that something is amiss here. Cryptocurrencies, if you're seeking a way to store value, I would not use it. If you're seeking it as a token to store, speculation, a speculative type of venture, sure. But I just used distributed ledger. And one of the things I did with my paper was look at it across the space value chain. Where can it be applied? Space is not a leader. There are other industries that have really led. For instance, the food industry for supply chain. They're way ahead of us. Fundraising and partnerships, I think it's a great way to do this in an inexpensive way without a lot of commissions. Supply chain management, risk management, networking and communications is another thing you can do. ID management as well. So there's a lot of really good applications. Other industries are ahead, I think will follow. And then distributed ledger technology, it's not so much disruptive as it is foundational, like TCP/IP. And I think some of the problems we've had with blockchain is we're waiting for some kind of miracle. I think we're going to see slow, steady progress. And we're going to see it start to percolate into a lot of applications that are below the radar screen. Just like TCP/IP when it came into the marketplace. It took 30 years. And I think that's how we're going to see this. The crypto market kind of gave us a false expectation about how the rest of distributed ledger technology would evolve. And it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a very slow, steady, incremental type of progress.
I can't leave the comment about store of value hanging. We do have to have a counter, of course, and I would always argue that eventually the United States dollar, just like every other fiat currency, is doomed, and blockchain enables some kind of hope that we have an alternative that is not controlled centrally.
Yeah, one of the foundational things here that I think often people forget, especially people new to crypto, blockchain in general, is ledgers have been used since banks since they were trading stuff, right? I mean, the whole idea is you had a ledger, and the idea of having a digital ledger is better than having something that can burn up or be manipulated or copied. You ever heard the term, you've got two books, you're keeping two sets of books? Well, it's just a secure way to make sure that you know, if I've got money in a bank or if I've got something of value, I want to make sure it can't get manipulated. That's what a digital ledger, all it does is through algorithms, in particular, the SHA-256 algorithm, or others, if you're using Ethereum for smart contracting, it's a way, assuming you have enough computing so that you can't get bad actors to take it over, to ensure that what is being done is in fact being done, and it can't ever be undone. And that has huge value in space, as well as it has huge value here on the planet, right? And so understanding that the foundation, now, in order to build out that security, you've got to have an incentive. And that's where cryptocurrencies come in. You have to have an incentive, because if commercial companies don't do it, whether it's in space or deep space or on Mars or Leo, if commercial companies aren't doing it, it won't get done. The days of Kennedy saying we're going to the moon and making it happen are over, right? It's the Starlinks of the world.
If it even happened.
If it even happened.
Oh my God.
Just kidding.
No.
Kidding.
Right. So you must be a flat earther. I'm just kidding.
Cody likes to throw grenades.
Yeah, my point being is, you know, the folks that are building it here, their incentive is Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin will cease to be a mining thing, sure, it's years and years out, but eventually it won't be productive to do it anymore. So what happens? Well, you'll be trading currencies, digital or others, and you'll be like the Visa of the world. You'll be the MasterCard of the world. You'll be getting paid to do transactions over the digital financial transaction, but you're building the railroads of the future financial transactions, smart contracting, and so on. And the same thing can be done in space.
Absolutely. Well, JD, so when you had the ledgers there, I actually had a US dollar, which is very rare to find these days. You know, I mean, the idea of, you know, there's a serial number, right? I mean, and how do you counterfeit something like that? Because we don't have access to the ledger. Where if it's digital, right, in a software-defined future, only criminals carry cash. And it's that accountability in supply chain and more that we do. Oh, look at that. See? How much is that one?
That's it's the NARA's. It's got Tesla on it. I thought I had a $5 trillion bill somewhere in here.
Well, that's well, if we keep going,
some $2 bills.
Yeah.
1 cent.
I know, right? Well, you know, but for what we're doing in the industry, for the space and for defense and everything else, and please, General, forgive me if I get the pronunciation of your last name wrong. I saw Spider Oak today, space cybersecurity company, added retired General Polakowski, and he had a great quote. And this was coming onto the panel today. He said, General Polakowski said, blockchain-based products for securing satellites and their networks are a crucial part of building resiliency. And I think he's nailed it. I mean, it's really, that's just it. It's all about making things safer, better, more accountable, and where we can conduct commerce and trade in a transparent manner. Not security transparent, but in a transparent manner. Just making our lives easier.
You know, recently, the Financial Times talked about crypto and scalability. Is it really scalable? They say they're motivated, these validators on the blockchain, by essentially high fees and the ability to, participate in this market and keep these fees high and to keep the congestion high. So what do you say to that? It seems like, to me, it's you have to have three things: security, decentralization, and scalability. Is cryptocurrency scalable? And validators who play in this market, are they motivated in the right way?
To be clear, I'm short Ethereum in my hedge fund, Ethereum futures, technically. I'm long a couple of Bitcoin futures against that, partly because of what you're hinting at there. The gas fees in Ethereum right now make it uneconomical for most smart contract ideas to actually be applied. on Ethereum anymore. And they've been putting off this hard fork forever that's going to redo the pricing, gas fees supposedly. But I think the reason they keep punting it is because Ethereum's prices, with gas fees drop 90%, 99%, which they really need to make most applications practical, Ethereum's going down 90%. The price of Ethereum's probably dropping to, I don't know, $400, $500, $300, and down from where it previously was 90%. Lee, you've got to get in here. We keep stepping over you.
You guys are doing great. I do want to jump in and kind of provide a couple of guardrails for the conversation and the audience. So some things to keep in mind here are there's three different buckets of blockchains. You have, and within the permissionless blockchain, you have two different consensus mechanisms that are kind of one out. You have proof of work and proof of stake, and those are both in the public permissionless arena. Bitcoin is the most well-known proof of work blockchain and proof of stake. Ethereum, I think, Cody, August is mid-August is when they are officially. I know they've said that for months, but it does appear that Ethereum will switch over to proof of stake.
I'll place a $10 bet on it with you right now, Lee.
Right now, I'll say it'll happen before September 1st.
I'll give you 10-1 odds even.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll make it. Yeah, we'll continue the vetting after the conversation. But another thing that I think Karen said that was important for the audience to know is that there are private permission blockchains. They are known as distributed ledgers. They don't necessarily solve the same problems, and I think that's kind of we're having in space. There's probably problems that are best solved with a private permission blockchain, and probably problems that need to be tracked on a public, on the Bitcoin blockchain or a different blockchain that is permissionless. Not that you would put all the data on the blockchain, that would be cost prohibitive, but that you would put hashes on the blockchain. So let me ask this. Now that we have kind of three different buckets with the DLT permissioned side, the proof of stake within the permissionless umbrella, and proof of work, Karen, and then we'll kind of go down the line. Karen, how do you feel, or which use cases, if you will, fall most in line with those categories?
Okay, so I believe from my work, and I can hyperlink to my paper if you want to read it. It kind of helps clarify it to me. But when I was studying this, from knowing very little about blockchain, a light bulb went off when I realized, you don't always have to do proof of work, proof of stake, which is so energy intensive. There can be, so crypto's open participation, open ledger. You could go to open participation, anyone can participate, but there's a permissioned ledger with the smaller group focused on controlling the recording. Then you don't have to go through all this intensive mining. And then the most closed system is closed participation and a permissioned ledger. A lot of corporations use that for various things where they just want to work within their enterprise, so to speak. And I truly believe it's those last two that will be important for many space applications. Space players are not as ubiquitous as, people just, throwing around currency. So it could be around space situational awareness. It could be, getting networks to speak to each other. It could be, basic applications involving various functions in the satellite system itself and working with other satellite partners. And supply chain partners. Hopefully we can get to that. There is fear of sharing proprietary information in that, just like now without blockchain, they don't always want to reveal their supply chain details. But if we could get to open participation, permissioned ledger, I think we could open it up to a tremendous amount of new applications within the space industry, starting with perhaps something like space traffic management. It could also include supply chain management and getting various networks in space to work together.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, Karen, because as we think about tracking value and tracking assets, those tend to need to be a certain, there needs to be a certain level of trust. But with DLT in space, you have a fewer actors, you have more, the higher regulations, more governments involved. This is probably one of the rare cases where permissioned ledger makes more sense than permissionless due to the trade-offs. So last thing that I'll put in on the kind of the guardrails, and then I'll toss it over to Chris, to the same question to Chris, is the blockchain trilemma that Karen referenced earlier. Security, decentralization, and scalability. So that's, they call it the trilemma because it's really not possible within blockchain architectures to have all three. You have to design, optimize for two of the three. And Bitcoin is optimized for security and decentralization, whereas a permission ledger would be optimized for scalability and security. And you can design any sort of structure around those. And so your use case with Bitcoin in particular, Cody references, you really don't need much scalability on Bitcoin, because what you're doing there is you're creating a store of value that is completely free of interference from both state actors and any actor that's wanting to disrupt the ledger. So if I'm going to allocate 1 to 5% of my net worth, I'm going to allocate it on a proof of work ledger. But I don't want, if I'm joyriding on a Elon Musk rocket into outer space, I don't want them to be messing with the proof of work ledger like Bitcoin to track parts, because it's completely inefficient for that use case possibly. So Chris, same question to you. As you think about this from a communications perspective and satellite perspective, which buckets do you see most applicable to your industry, specifically into Lonestar?
No, Lee, well, thank you. Well, we're using distributed ledger very much because our first proof of concept data center actually heads up on Intuitive Machines' second mission to the moon under the NASA Commercial Lunar Payload Services program this time next year. And so we're using that to track our data. We're doing disaster recovery as a service, continuity of operations, backup as a service, smart storage as a service. It's actually cheaper to do it from the moon than it is from low Earth orbit for a whole bunch of reasons, which we won't go into now. But at the backbone of this is that tracking of the data, is the legitimacy of the data. It is the use of a distributed ledger. We can't do it without it. And so for us, it's crucial because we have to prove that document is that document, not which version of version control, etc. But from what you were just saying now, that there's two elements, and I say this with a strange accent that I have, but as an American citizen, right? I'm one of the old-fashioned ones. I swam across and my arms are still tired, right? So, and and I look at this and I look at two quick things. Number one is, and we're talking about currencies, we're talking about value, we're talking about tracking assets. Also, NFTs come into this as well. And I know that's almost a scary word, as scary as a cryptocurrency. But when you look at an image, when you look at validating an image, I look at the space industry and I look at remote sensing. And I look at our use of imagery in the war in Ukraine and tracking natural assets. And you look at fake news and how do you prevent fakes from getting in? It is a distributed ledger. It has to be for all of this. And there's one internally for the US government, and there should be for all imagery that goes to our respective parts of our agencies for proper action. Absolutely, yes. Right? You hear the band behind me? No, I'm saying, guys, come on, please. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't me. No, but the other side of that too is, look, we won the Cold War, and we find ourselves rapidly heading into Cold War 2.0. It's like some dreadful Rocky movie, right? I mean, we thought we'd won, and now there's some huge big bloke over there, and it's the older, smarter, better financed big brother of the first ones we beat, right? And what we have some of the hangovers from victory. Our entire procurement system and everything we do, and I know a lot of people are looking at this right now, but I hope sincerely they're looking at smart contracts, how that can help accelerate America's future in space, in procurement, in satellites, in technology. This is a new technology, whether there's a Pentagon coin even, dare I say that, for procurements, right? The idea that smart DAOs, everything we can do, we need to throw at this problem and solve it quickly. So we can go off and win this next damn bloody war, and we will win it. Of course we will, but we can make it a little less painless. by use of crypto.
That's great. JD, next question to you. As we think about congestion in space and coordination amongst countries, amongst nation states, how do we use distributed ledger technology to coordinate the cleanup of debris, and not only debris, but also China has their own satellite system, in addition to satellites that the United States has up in the global positioning system, and it's competitive. Space is not unlimited, so especially in the near Earth orbits. So how do we use distributed ledger technology for those purposes?
Well, I'm a big fan of just don't put junk in space. Right? There's a lot of things you can do through using distributed ledger and other types of methods and means, with blockchain and others to help solve that problem before it even becomes a problem. But let's just assume that we don't do that and we create the problem, and then we spend a lot of time and effort now having to fix the problem, which is what we're, as a species, good at doing. Everything that Chris just mentioned is applicable in this case, right? And it's coordination. Distributed ledger, in my opinion, just to piggyback on the last question, is the key. In 90%, I truly believe that. And the biggest challenge we're going to have with blockchain, whether it's distributed ledger or smart contracting or whatever it is getting people to agree to do it and coordinate among. I mean, because if you look at who's in space, a lot of it is become commercialized, right? With SpaceX and all. However, it's still government regulated, and the governments control all of it. And let's face it, governments aren't so good at getting along these days, or historically ever, right? So if you're going to have this map out, literally you've got to create a network that everybody agrees to, a platform that people agree to. That'll help solve the problem with lots of things, inclusive of space junk, right? Floating around, right? They're all satellites. They're just, some of them we care about and some of we don't. And that's my opinion on that.
Sure.
I'll give a broader answer if I could real quickly. And it's simply this, that the way I look at investing in space is, it's like when I was investing in the smartphone revolution in 2008. We finally had the costs drop to the point and the technologies advanced to the point where brilliant people were going to create all kinds of applications that I did not foresee, but I knew the platform existed because we had the cost down and the technology advanced enough. And I think space is finally at that space too, with relativity, with SpaceX, with Rocket Lab, with the private companies in the United States and globally, getting costs down to get the stuff, to get access to space now getting to be de minimis. The technologies and what we do in space are advancing rapidly, like we always do in an innovative world like the United States actually brings to the table. That is what I am investing in. Same thing with the blockchain. I have no idea the applications, the ideas that have been reported here today, better than any idea I'm ever going to come up with how to apply blockchain in space. But the one thing I'm smart enough to recognize is that space is finally about to become a multi-trillion-dollar economy. Blockchain itself is partly going to drive that. So we need to be here and doing stuff with space and blockchain. So that's why I'm investing in both.
Yeah, and one thing, Lee, just real quick, when I think about, I was on one of these panels earlier in the year or last year, whenever it was, and it was a phenomenal all-day event here on America's Future Series. And I had a chance to talk to some folks who are in the space. I mean, they're running the world when it comes to space, and LEO and all of those things. And one of the things that was brought up is mining in space, right? I mean, not Bitcoin mining, physical mining.
No, literal mining.
Literal mining in space, and how that is quadrillion-dollar business, because he said there's an asteroid on the outside, or there's a rock on the other side of the moon that has more platinum and gold and crusted with diamonds and rubies, I don't know, than just that one thing right on the other side of the moon that we never get to see because of the way it rotates or something. But there's so much minerals and things like that we could mine in space. Immediately I go to, okay, so we're breaking up a bunch of stuff that could become mini like asteroids that could somehow hit that. I mean, I'm just thinking about more space junk stuff that could get away. And the idea of having a way of tracking all that, going back to geolocation and things like that, if that is in fact going to happen, and I have no reason to believe it won't, where there's a will, there's a way, then even more so now than ever, we've got to have a holistic framework that everybody agrees to, whether it's distributed ledger or smart contracting or whatever it is, that allows us to track all this stuff that's happening and ensure the safety of those of us who aren't in space.
I would just add that, as I look across it, what are the benefits to using it? It's not always applicable. It's applicable. It's not always the best solution. But if you're seeking a certain amount of transparency or accountability, if you're seeking efficiency, possibly privacy and access, especially with permissioned access, it could be potentially a solution. And certainly resilience for embedded peer-to-peer smart contracts, for instance. They don't have to go through central authorization, which takes time. And also for new products and services, decentralized models can possibly help. So those were kind of the key benefits as I studied how could this apply to the space sector.
And Karen, how do we ensure with a permission ledger, you have to have the rules to the protocol written sort of beforehand, right? And the actors have to agree. That is a policy question that will be not insurmountable. I mean, it's very challenging. Did you address that in your paper? How do we address the policy challenges with writing the rules to the protocol on a permission blockchain?
Well, if you're part of the key group creating the permission ledger, there's a lot of flexibility to make up the rules that you need to run this operation. But a key policy question is for the U.S. government for certain types of, let's say, regulatory functions. Do they really want to cede centralization? Do they really want to give up their central authority? And that's key. And that's why there's so many blockchain fans that do not like our monetary policy, that are just moving almost in an anti-government sentiment type of way. I'm not talking about cryptos in general, but there is an element to that. So it's going to take time for the US government and for centralized parties to kind of go, can I run this in a more streamlined way? And do I even run it at all? And if we look at space traffic management, maybe that will be one where they start to realize the only solution perhaps might be to move towards this. But you have a mindset. It's a centralized authority mindset. And that culture takes a lot of time to move towards this decentralization process. And that's why, another reason why I think permissioned ledgers will be a good way to be the bridge to create some decentralization there.
Can I mention that's like these ideas are what the Skyttle space debris cleaning cryptocurrency that I created is going to go out and fund. If someone's going to create the ledger, we don't need the government to actually go out and create the ledgers that are going to track space debris. We would fund someone who is going to say, hey, let's create a distributed protected ledger. And that's the whole point of our idea, is to try to create economic incentives for space enthusiasts to fund these types of ideas, including blockchain-oriented ideas that would solve space debris.
Yeah, and Karen, I actually read your white paper, if you want to call it that. I think it was last year, if I recall. And one of the things you discussed was fundraising. Is an application for space use. I mean, oftentimes people don't connect the two. Right. And having cryptocurrencies, blockchains, things like that, be a vehicle that allows or enables the evolution of new technologies in space. right? And that's an incentive. And I thought that was an interesting perspective. I hadn't heard that in such, when you read it, it's different than hearing it, I guess. And so I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, and it didn't seem that long ago when Indiegogo and Kickstarter came out, and now they were disruptors, and now blockchain could be a disruptor to them in terms of financing new ventures, and they could certainly do it possibly with lower commissions and lower overhead.
Got to get them Ethereum gas fees down then.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, go ahead, JD. Sorry.
I was just going to say that, a lot of people can get fixated. How do you actually use it in space? Like you have to be physically in space. And there's a whole other realm to this. And I think you were touching on that, Karen, in your paper, there's a whole enablement that blockchain and distributed ledgers, and whether they're private or public or open or closed, whatever you want to call them, have to support space in general, community, communications and bringing people together, and security and comms and all of those types of things that we need right here to support that up there.
Right. It doesn't have to be that flashy. It's running underneath the radar screen behind whatever the company is. You may not even know it's there. The word ledger is a boring word.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and you guys are making, Karen, JD, Cody, you've all made amazing points, and you've hit something really important. This is a new idea. And one of the things that, we're all in tech and we all embrace new ideas. We're first adopters, I imagine. But a lot of people aren't. And I think what we're seeing that is how soon can such a new idea be embraced by government, by corporations and others. It's fast coming because it's so logical. But I'll give you food for thought. 2023, executive order. Next year is when the US government, federal government, goes fully digital. And how long have we had computers? How long have we been in the paperless office? But it's only next year that this is happening, right? And so that sometimes these things take a little bit of time to stagger through the system. But you guys see it? Is it coming through the system? Or is this like demand pull or tech push?
It's partly outside of the system. That's the whole beauty of it, right? The decentralized nature of it all is like, it's disruptive because it is outside of that de facto system that we all have grown accustomed to for everything we interact with society. And decentralizing things and creating incentive to have the open ledger that's decentralized is truly revolutionary. I think that is what you're again hinting at is it is so revolutionary that we're just starting to tackle the ideas that we can create new incentives to tackle tragedy of the commons and do the types of things that normally only governments could fund. Only governments could do things that did not have an economic incentive other than protecting society somehow. But that is now, we can protect society, we can clean up society, we can feed children, we can clean up space debris through this revolutionary brand new concept of cryptocurrencies and decentralized autonomous organizations and the incentives therein.
I think, Cody, you should just drop the mic. And so with that, I do have to jump, guys. I only had about 45 minutes here. I just want to say it was an honor with Karen, Cody, Chris, Lee. Thank you so much on behalf of all of us here at TMGcore, myself. I thank the American Future Series team. I got to jump, but I know you guys are going to continue on. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, JD.
Thanks, JD.
Bye.
And we do only have two or so minutes left. Cody, I'm glad you brought up tragedy of the commons and collective action problems. Eleanor Ostrom and Mansur Olson are some of the greatest academics who have ever written on those topics. And so if anybody's interested, they can pick up one of those Nobel laureates books and dive into it further. Just one last go around and then we'll wrap it up. Karen, Chris, and Cody, in the near term, what are you most excited about for your work, your company, as it pertains to blockchain? Go ahead, Karen.
Well, near term, I'd like to see the US government become a little more savvy on blockchain and distributed ledger technology. The National Institute of Standards and Technology in 2018, this is a quote, said blockchain technologies have the power to disrupt many industries, to avoid missed opportunities and undesirable surprises organizations should start by investigating on whether or not blockchain can help them. I'd love to see a little more commitment to exploring those opportunities within government and for some of our public sector applications.
Chris?
Oh, just embrace it. Don't fear it. As Karen says, learn about it, understand it, see how it applies to your organization, see how it can help you. It is a truly helpful tool. You know, it's a tool. That's the best message I can give across. And we're using it, like I said, next year, actually December, first launch, second launch this time next year with the first proof of concept data centers doing storage and continuity of operations from the lunar surface. And we're using blockchain and distributed ledgers every step of the way. So,
go to sktls.com, sktls.com. Learn about how we are going to actually fund cleaning up the single biggest impediment to the space revolution, the space junk problem. We solved that with incentives through profit motive at the Dow of sktls.com. You go read the white paper, learn all about it. That's what I'm most excited about. More importantly, though, the space revolution is here. Multi-trillion-dollar economy is coming. Get your buckets out in front of it now and start investing in the space revolution.
And a 1% allocation to Bitcoin.
Not anymore. That was 2013.
So now it's up to 5%.
Well, I would actually suggest not buying Bitcoin right now either. We got to get this 19,000 fraudulent, silly, stupid cryptos to go to zero. It's probably going to hurt. We got to get Ethereum gas fees down 90%. That stuff's probably going to hurt Bitcoin. I would be careful with any crypto, including Bitcoin right now. But yes, in general, Bitcoin's the safest and best. Stick with it.
Guys, thanks for being on. It was an honor. I'm going to turn it back over to David and the studio.
Hello, this is Scott, and I'll tell you what, Lee, thank you so much for a job well done. And Cody, one thing going forward, try and be a little more animated when you're trying to be involved with something
passion.
like that. You know,
Look, I'm a passionate guy, and don't even get me started on the fact that the SEC and the United States government has a billion laws they could apply to actually crack down on the fraud, the rampant fraud, the obvious fraudulent cryptos that are out there. And they're like, well, you know, we're going to ride on a white horse after everything goes to zero and protect the people. It'll be too late. Get out there and crop. Anyway, yes, I get it.
We applaud your passion
passionate about it.
Now, I am angry that you didn't call me in 2013, though. I want you to know that.
You could have, if you were reading
Where
my
were you in my life?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I tweeted about it. That's about, you know.
I didn't have a Twitter account. That's not my fault.
Well, I will say this, with all sincerity, you all were just great. You really will.
Thank you,
you
Karen.
were, and we got all kinds of wonderful information that I'm sure a lot of folks are going to be sharing with a lot of folks. And thank you to all four of you. It was just great.
Thank you. And
Thanks
Chris,
for having me.
And
What
I
a
think
blast.
this will be
Thanks,
everybody.
It was a pleasure.
This will be
Great
viewed
job,
more than any
Lee.
other segment we've had. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Lee. Thank you all.
Thanks, Lee. Great job.